Hello everyone, thank you for joining me today. This is normally a music channel. I'm a music person, as you can see behind me, but today I'm going to be talking about something completely off topic, which is recovering from a sports hernia without surgery. I noticed I'm somebody that suffered or partially continues to suffer from a sports hernia, but I would say I'm like 90 to 95% recovered now. It's been 2 years for me, and I wanted to fill that gap that I noticed on YouTube. Like, if you search for how to recover from a sports hernia without surgery, there's almost no results. And the people that you will find on YouTube, if you're searching for this, you'll probably come across the guy and the girl from California on the West Coast. There's a girl that has adductor tendinopathy exercises. I think she might be from Australia or New Zealand or something like that. There's a few people in the realm that you'll come across, but um, honestly, none of the stuff that they were recommending on their channels worked. So I'm here to tell you, and I'm going to try to make this as concise as possible in an organized fashion, how I recovered from my sports hernia. And let's get started here. Another topic that I want to address before I get further into this video is why there's so much confusion around sports hernias to begin with. And the reason is a sports hernia is kind of like a catch-all bucket for many different specific injuries that can happen in your abdominal or hip area. There are a lot of different tendons and muscles that attach to bones, and like, let's say you go on the forums and you say, how do I recover from a sports hernia? Tell me your stories. You're going to get 20 different stories from 20 different people because they all had their own specific flavor of injuries for sports hernia, right? You can have things that are completely torn. You can have something that's partially torn. You can have something that's degenerated but not torn. And that's what I think creates all of the confusion and chaos around this injury. But one thing I will say that I noticed about the injury is that I've seen the people that recover from it, that haven't gotten surgery, there's generally around a 1.5 to 2 year timeline if you listen to their anecdotes. I'm sure that there are people that have recovered later than that and some that have recovered faster, but you're generally looking at a 1.5 to 2 years for this thing to settle out, which is unfortunate, but I guess that's just the nature of what this injury is. So let's talk about how the injury happened for me. I'm an athlete, or an adult athlete. I played volleyball for most of my adult life, and from playing volleyball and jumping and landing, I had compressed the L4, L5 in my back, and it was particularly smushed on my left side. So my one of my discs is like just kind of like a little bit tilted and flat in the one spot, instead of being like a nice donut. It's kind of like a donut that has half of a flat tire. And the reason I'm talking about my back injury is that the back injury fed into and helped to create the sports hernia. And I'll explain how that happened. So I was working out at the gym. I was on the machine where you sit like this, the ab crunch machine, and you pull down like this as hard as you can, and you pull up with your legs, so you're kind of like crunching. And I'd been putting like a pretty heavy amount of weight on it, maybe 80, 90, or 100 pounds, as I was working through my typical 3 sets of 10. I was trying to get abs for the summer. This happened about almost exactly 2 years ago to the date. So I was working out. I was doing my ab crunches, like going really hard to the point of exhaustion. And about 2 or 3 days later, I noticed that I had an injury. And the delay between when the injury happened, which was completely silent, there was no, oh my gosh, ow, I just hurt myself, I can't believe it, something's torn. I left the gym, I went home, and I was fine, and I thought everything was okay. So that's what made it even more super confusing when the symptoms started, which was about 48 hours to maybe 72 hours later. The first and most palpable symptom that I had was testicular pain on the side of the injury. It was my left side. And it just felt like, for the men out there, it just felt like you got hit in the groin. And it was a persistent pain. It was throbbing. I was using ice packs. I was having trouble walking and not limping with it. I remember I had general generic pain coming up into my low abdomen that could not be localized. Like if no matter where I pushed, I couldn't find a particular owie spot, so to speak. It was just the lower left quadrant of my abdominal section was also irritated. And the other symptoms that really sucked, the one that I think drives sports hernia people the most crazy, is that prickly, spiky, weird pain that you get from your hip crease that goes all the way down the inside of your leg and maybe even as far down as your knee. That pain is just absolutely aggravating, annoying, frustrating, never ending. It was awful. I remember only being able to walk maybe 1 or 2 blocks before the pain would flare up, and then, like, let's say I was trying to go out for a walk, or I was trying to do something with my family. The trip would get cut short because my leg would be hurting so bad that I would have to come back home and put ice on it. Even then, putting ice on it didn't really help. It's just an absolutely miserable injury. It took me a while to realize that I had a sports hernia. I'm not going to go into the backstory, but I thought I had I'll just try to keep it high level. I thought I had a testicular injury. That turned out to not be true. Then I went to my general doctor. I got a bunch of blood work done to make sure that there was nothing wrong. Everything there came back okay. I ended up going to an orthopedic place near us. There's one called Rothman. And Rothman thought that I had a hip injury. They thought I had a cam-shaped hip impingement, so they gave me a steroid injection. That didn't work. And then eventually Rothman, I exhausted all of my options with them, and they said, hey, you need to go and find somebody that has experience treating sports hernias. We think you have a sports hernia, but there's nobody here at Rothman that can help you with that. We only do orthopedic, and because sports hernias are generally like muscular tendon related, that's not something that we can work on. Regarding surgeons that fix sports hernias, there are a couple of them in the United States. There's a famous one near me in Pennsylvania, and then there's another one, I believe, on the West Coast in California that is practicing. My takeaway from my research is that if you go to see these people, you're going to get a surgery. They do not take insurance, so you're looking at $20,000 out of pocket for it, and that's assuming that the first try fixes it. What happens if you get the surgery and then they need to do a tune-up, or something's a little bit off? Or do you have another $20,000 to lay out to go in and try to get that fixed? So because of that, I was personally hesitant to get any kind of surgery done, and it just wasn't something that I was looking for. So I was looking into more of like, all right, how can I physical therapy myself out of this scenario? What's it going to take to do that? So where it really started to turn around for me was about a year into the injury. I got a referral from a friend, and that friend was saying, hey, this guy can fix sports hernias. He helped my brother such and such, and you should go see him. And luckily, he was within a reasonable drive from my house, so I went to see him. His name is J. Milo Seawards, and he practices currently at Temple Health. He took a look at my MRI results, and he made the assessment that he was pretty confident, maybe 80% confident, that he was going to be able to help me without getting any surgery. And while we're on the topic of the MRI, let me tell you what my MRI, what the parameters of it were and what the results were. So it was a MRI bony pelvis without contrast. So it basically scanned from maybe the top of my quadricep muscles up into like the top of my, maybe to like the top of my stomach. So it's kind of like your entire lower back, and then the bottom portion of your legs and hips as well is covered in the scan. It was a pretty long MRI. I think it took about 45 minutes because the machine has such a great distance to cover and travel that it's just like a longer procedure than your typical maybe 25-minute MRI. The findings confirmed that I had a compressed, degenerated L4, L5 disc, and like I said, that played into the original injury. And I also had, and I'm going to read this verbatim, mild degeneration of the rectus abdominis adductor aponeurosis, but without detachment, meaning it's not torn. No adductor or distal rectus abdominis strains. No atrophy of the distal rectus abdominis muscles. So that mild degeneration of the aponeurosis was the crux of my injury, and that's where my doctor J. Milo Seward and his counterpart, who's named Corey Keller, helped me. Where the whole thing turned around was, like I said a few minutes ago, I could not walk more than a block or two without my leg getting irritated and having to come home and ice it, which was like super life impacting for me. I'm a very active person. I wasn't handling that very well mentally at all. So I went in and I got the first steroid injection from Corey Keller, and it took... Nothing happened for the first, I was keeping track. I was keeping like an injury log. Nothing happened for the first 19 days. And then all of a sudden it was like the steroid started to take effect. And I noticed whenever I went for a walk with my family, I could walk like twice the distance, maybe like 2 miles, and it's more like 5 times the distance. And instead of a couple hundred yards and having to give up, it was more like 2 miles. And then it was like, all right, this thing's starting to give me warning signs. I'm going to come back home and just kind of return to base and let this thing rest. So it actually ended up being that the first steroid injection did the most work, if you want to call it that, in terms of healing the injury. And then I ended up getting 4 more steroid injections over the course of maybe a year and a half time frame, where each time I saw Dr. Keller, he was moving the needle into slightly different angles and slightly different places for the injection site. And when I got the 5th one, I noticed another major improvement. So it was like injections 2 through 4, maybe mild to no progress with them. And when I got the 5th injection, that seemed to be the one that really like landed in the final right spot and finished off my injury. Here we are now, about 2 years later, and I can say confidently that my injury is about 90 to 95% healed. And the 5% that I notice is just kind of like, I notice it pain. It's not even pain. It's like that feeling you get when you've recovered from a long-term injury and your body reminds you that there's still like a very slight defect there. But at the same time, I'm still able to go cycling, walk for very long distances, 5-6 miles if I want to. I do incline walking. I can lift weights. So everything, I'm playing volleyball. So everything that I wanted to do, that I was able to do before I got hurt, I'm still able to do now. All right, so let's do a summary here of what worked. 5 steroid injections over the course of a year and maybe 3 months. Incline walking, so walking up and down hills, or doing the same thing on a treadmill at the gym. Just going about your day to day, just being active. If you're somebody just moving around, that combined with the effect of the steroid injections, to me, gave me the best progress. Obviously, but needs to be restated, don't do the same injury or the same exercise that caused the injury in the first place. The biggest component for me that made a difference, along with the steroid injections, was just waiting. For some reason, it seems like this injury has about a 1.5 to 2.5 year timeline, typically. And for me, it took about 2 years. It's almost 2 years to the day since I was injured that I'm making this video here for you. And I can confidently say that I'm 95% recovered. I go through many days of the week without even thinking about it. And then every once in a while, maybe if the weather's lousy, I'll feel it. But I would say confidently 95% healed. All right, I hope this video helped you out there. If you're suffering from a sports hernia, I feel your pain. I know what it's like. It can really mess with your head because none of the stuff that you try really seems to work. It's a very frustrating injury. But like I said, try to get with a doctor that has experience with it. Make sure that you're able to get steroid injections. I think that that is a critical part to the recovery. At least it was for me. And just try to keep your head on straight and not get too depressed if you have a setback. It's going to take a little bit, but I'm here. I'm recovered, so I'm at least one person that you can point to that can say yes, he did it. That's all for today. Thank you.